In this video, we're going to be looking at adjectives that modify nouns. Such adjectives are called attributive adjectives. There's also predicative adjectives which follow verbs. We'll look at those in a later video. So here we're looking at adjectives that modify nouns and also the adverbs that could then in turn modify the adjectives. Let's take a look at some examples. So we have something like the difficult problem. Okay, where we have an adjective difficult modifying problem. Now one thing to note about adjectives is that you can really have more than one. You can have as many as you want. So you could say the wordy difficult problem, the long wordy difficult problem. We can see that each of these is an adjective. So seems long, how long, very long, longer, longest, wordier, wordiest, seems wordy, seems difficult, how difficult, very difficult, more difficult. Okay, so these are all adjectives, and we can keep piling them on. There's really no limit as far as the grammar is concerned to how many adjectives you can have modifying a noun. Your audience may eventually get tired of listening to you pile on more adjectives, but the grammar lets you have essentially infinitely many if you want to. So how are we going to capture that fact? Well, we're going to capture that fact with recursion. So what we're going to have here is we're going to say that adjective phrases can combine with a nominal to make a nominal. Well, they can make a bigger nominal. So when you put difficult together with problem to get difficult problem, you've now got a nominal. And what can you do with a nominal? Add another adjective. So you can say wordy difficult problem and make an even bigger nominal. Then you can say long wordy difficult problem and make an even bigger nominal. So we can keep recursively adding in more and more adjectives. For right now, we'll just say that the adjective phrase consists of an adjective. But we want to say it's really an adjective phrase because, as we'll see shortly, you can add in adverbs. Let's take a look at some examples. So here we have the difficult problem. Let's take a look and see how we build up the structure. We know that problem is going to be a noun. It's a singular noun. One problem, two problems. So we can add in the structure for it. Difficult, we've already identified as being an adjective. We've said very difficult, how difficult. And our rule says that we can combine an adjective phrase plus a nominal to get us a bigger nominal. Okay, so here we're finally making use of that nominal level. So essentially the nominal's in there because we have a level that's bigger than a noun but smaller than a noun phrase. So that's the nominal level, and this is where we're going to put modifiers that modify nouns. So here adjective phrases are going to be our first kind of modifier modifying a noun. So we'll put that guy in, and then we're ready to mark our determiner here. And now with the determiner plus the nominal, we can make a noun phrase. Let's bring those guys together. So we label it a noun phrase, and voila, we get this. All right, so there's our noun phrase for the difficult problem. Now let's look at one where we have more than one adjective. So we can add in another adjective with like the wordy difficult problem. Okay, so we can take a difficult problem whose structure we've already seen, and we've drawn it up as this. We've got a nominal here, and now we want to add in another adjective phrase. Okay, so we can add in wordy. We've already seen that's an adjective, very wordy, how wordy. And our rule says combine an adjective phrase plus a nominal, which we have, to make a bigger nominal. And there we go. So that's how we would add that in to make the even bigger nominal wordy difficult problem. Now we can go ahead and add in our determiner again and build up our noun phrase to get the noun phrase for the wordy difficult problem. And of course, we've got a nominal here, so if we wanted to, we could have added another adjective to it. Let's see how that would work. Okay, so we could add in the structure, we could add in the adjective long to make the long wordy difficult problem. We already know what the structure is for wordy difficult problem. It looks like this. Okay, so there's that. And again, we've got an adjective phrase, a new adjective phrase with long, so the long wordy difficult problem, and now we just build up a bigger nominal, and now we've got the nominal the long, wordy, difficult problem. And again, we could continue on if we wanted to and add in more adjectives. All right, and then we once again just finish up with our determiner. Kind of the determiner caps off the structure. You know, that kind of ends the noun phrase essentially once you get to the determiner. There's a few more things you could add on after the determiner, but we generally won't look at those. So kind of the determiner ends your noun phrase, and now we're ready. We have everything that we need there. All right, let's take a look to see what happens when we add in, as we've said, these things can be adjective phrases, so that the adjective itself can also have modifiers, usually in the form of adverbs. Let's take a look at that. So just like nouns can have modifiers, adjectives themselves can have modifiers. In this case, they're adverbs. So adverbs are pretty much modifiers of anything other than nouns. So we can have an adjective like hard. The problem seems hard, very hard. But we can modify it with an adverb and say the very hard problem. And just like we've seen before, anytime you get modification, there's recursion, or there's the potential for recursion. And indeed, we can keep adding in more varies. The very, very hard problem, the very, 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 very hard problem, etc. Or the exceedingly hard problem. And then adverbs can have their own modifiers. So you can have something like the quite exceedingly hard problem, where quite could be understood to modify exceedingly. We'll achieve this with the similar sorts of rules. Again, recursion is going to be a big part of it. So now we're just noting that adjective phrases, in addition to being able to just be adjectives, they can also have an adverb phrase inside them. And again, it's recursive, so that the adverb phrase plus the adjective phrase just gives you a bigger adjective phrase. And conversely, adverb phrases could consist of just an adverb, or they could have their own modifiers, an adverb phrase. And again, the adverb phrase plus the adverb phrase gives you an even bigger adverb phrase that you could then add more adverbs to. Let's take a look at some example sentences, or phrases. They're not sentences yet. So if we have something like the very hard problem, let's draw up the structure for that. All right, so we know that problem, we've already said that's a singular count noun, so that'll be fine. Hard, we've seen, is an adjective. So let's take a look at that. Now we've also got very, which we've said is an adverb and an adverb phrase by itself. Now the question is, how do these things combine? Now we have seen that adjective phrases and nominals could combine to make a bigger nominal, like this. The problem with that is, if we do that here, we now have an adverb phrase. Adverbs can modify anything except nouns and nominals. Okay, so here would be stuck. There's no way to combine an adverb phrase with a nominal. So this structure is not going to be the right one. So we don't want that structure. Instead, what we need to do is combine the adverb phrase and the adjective phrase first to make a bigger adjective phrase. Okay, so we combine them to make a bigger adjective phrase. All right, because we've said adverbs can modify adjectives. When they do, we just get a bigger adjective phrase. Now that we have these combined, now we can say we have an adjective phrase plus a nominal to make a bigger nominal. Now we have this structure, and at last we can add in our determiner to close off our noun phrase, the very hard problem. Okay, so with the adverb modifying the adjective. So what do we do if we have two adverbs modifying the adjective? So if we have something like the very, very hard problem. Again, so we've got this is our noun. Our adjective phrase starts off with hard, and then we know that both very and the other very are both adverbs. Okay, they're modifying adjectives. They have to be adverbs. How do we combine these guys? Well, we have said that adverb phrases can modify other adverb phrases, but in this case I don't think we have, or we don't have that. Very is unusual in that it usually doesn't take other adverbs modifying it. Instead, if you think about it, very is only able to repeat there as because hard is there. So each very seems to be intensifying hard, right? It's a very hard problem. It's a very, very hard problem. So we want those to build up together. So we'll have very plus hard to give us an adjective phrase. okay, like we've seen before. Again, if we have hard combined with problem first, we're going to be in trouble. We can't do that. Then we can have the other very combine with this new adjective phrase we've formed to give us the very, very hard problem. Now, once we've kind of put all of our modifiers onto the adjective phrase, we're ready to combine it with our nominal to make a bigger nominal, to get us the very, very hard problem. And then we'll, of course, be ready, as always, to put in our determiner last and to make up our noun phrase with this structure. Let's take a look at an example where we could have one adverb modifying another. That would occur in something like the quite exceedingly hard problem. Okay, so he did it quite exceedingly. So there we can see that quite can modify exceedingly, whereas we can never have something like he did it very, very. It has to be very, very something. So that's how we know very is really more dependent on the adjective and always combines with it. Quite exceedingly, so though we could have quite modifying exceedingly. Of course, quite can also modify hard, quite hard problems. So this one's ambiguous. It could either be quite exceedingly, where quite and exceedingly are modifying each other, or it could be the one where both behave like very and each independently modify hard. Let's take a look at both of those structures. Regardless of the structure, the problem is still going to be our singular count noun. Hard is still our adjective phrase. Both exceedingly and quite are adverb phrases, so we get those in there. And now let's see the ways in which these things can combine. Now, as we've said, in this case, we could have quite modifying exceedingly or modifying hard, where it has the very structure. If it has the very structure, that's the one we've already seen, where we have adjective phrase like this, built up exceedingly hard, and then we add in quite to make us a bigger one. And this structure ends up looking just like what we had with very, very. The very, very hard problem, the quite exceedingly hard problem. But there's another possibility, again, where quite modifies exceedingly first. So let's take a look at that. We're going to back out of this structure and look at that where quite modifies exceedingly. In that case, we'll have quite exceedingly build up and be an adverb phrase first. So it's a bigger adverb phrase. So he did it quite exceedingly. So quite modifies exceedingly. All right, now quite exceedingly is going to modify the adjective hard to make the bigger adjective phrase quite exceedingly hard. So to give us this structure, which will be a bigger adjective phrase, okay, that in turn can modify the nominal to make a bigger nominal. And then last but not least, of course, we put back in our determiner to make our new noun phrase. So the quite exceedingly hard problem, again, where quite is understood to modify exceedingly, would have this structure. Let's see how this would work within sentences. So let's take a look at the sentence, big dogs scare small children. Now, none of our other rules have changed. They're all the same. We've just added in additional rules that adjective phrases can combine with nominals to make bigger nominals, and adverb phrases can combine with adjective phrases to make bigger adjective phrases. Otherwise, all of our rules are the same. So let's see. So we have children. That's going to be a plural noun, one child, two children. We've got that. It's modified by the adjective phrase, which is small. Seem small, very small, how small. As we've seen, when we combine those guys, we get a bigger nominal phrase. So let's put that in. Now, as we learned last time, you don't actually need to have a determiner in all noun phrases, especially when you either have a mass noun or a plural noun, which is what we've got here. So we've got a plural noun, so we don't need a determiner, so we can have just a noun phrase by itself that consists of just a nominal without a determiner. So that's what we have in this case. So now we've built up the object of our sentence. We're ready to add in our verb. This verb's in the plain present form. There's no S suffix on it, but it's present. It's not past, which would be scared. Scare small children. The verb plus the noun phrase after it makes a bigger verb phrase. and that gives us this structure. Okay, so that'll give us our predicate. So we're ready for scare small children. So we're ready for the subject, they scare small children. Again, we have a plural nominal. It again has an adjective modifying it. Big seems big, how big, very big. And again, the adjective phrase plus the nominal makes a nominal, as here. Okay. And again, we don't have a determiner, so we just put together, or just the nominal in this case by itself can be the noun phrase. And then once we have the subject, they scare small children. Once we have the subject and the predicate built up, they're going to combine to make the sentence, big dogs scare small children. Let's take a look at one last example here. The mean teacher assigned the quite exceedingly hard problem. So as you can see, with the addition of adjectives and adverbs, our sentences can already get quite long. In fact, they can be infinitely long since we can add in infinitely many adjectives or adverbs. We've already done the structure for the quite exceedingly hard problem. It would be this. Okay, so there's the structure for the quite exceedingly hard problem. Right, so that's the object noun phrase. Our verb is assigned. It's the preterite form. It has that ed on there. The verb plus the object, of course, gets us our verb phrase. So there's our predicate assigned the quite exceedingly hard problem. Then we have the subject, he or she, the mean teacher. That consists of our nominal. Of course, we have an adjective with it. Mean, seems mean, how mean, meaner, meanest. The adjective plus the nominal combines to give us a bigger nominal, like this. Then, of course, we can put in our determiner. Determiner plus the nominal gives us the noun phrase. And now we have our subject. And, of course, subject plus the predicate is going to give us our sentence structure. So with that, you should hopefully now be able to draw sentence structures that contain adjectives modifying nouns and adverbs modifying those adjectives.